The ultrasound image fluttered to the polished marble floor, like a delicate leaf caught in an autumn breeze. For a moment, Madeline Harris froze, her breath caught in her throat as she watched the black and white photo slide across the floor, coming to rest at the exquisitely polished Oxford shoes of Richard Bennett, CEO of Bennett Innovations. Time seemed to slow as his piercing blue eyes shifted from the quarterly report in his hand to the small image at his feet. "I believe you dropped something, Ms. Harris," he said, his deep voice carrying across the now silent executive floor. Before Madeline could move, Richard bent down, his 6'3" frame folding gracefully as he retrieved the ultrasound photo. His expression remained neutral as he extended it toward her, but something flickered in his eyes as they caught the date printed in the corner. April 15th, 2025. Exactly 11 weeks after their encounter at the Bellamy Hotel charity gala. Madeline's fingers trembled slightly as she took the photo, hoping he hadn't made the connection. "Thank you, Mr. Bennett," she managed, slipping the image into her leather portfolio. "The quarterly projections are ready for your review. I've highlighted the areas showing the most growth potential." Richard's face revealed nothing as he accepted the report she offered, but the intensity of his gaze told her everything. He knew, or at least he suspected. "Join me in my office, Ms. Harris," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "I believe we have some matters to discuss." 7 weeks into her position as financial analyst at Bennett Innovations, Madeline had carefully avoided one-on-one meetings with the CEO. The company employed over 300 people across 3 floors of the downtown high-rise, making it relatively easy to keep her distance from the executive suite. Until today. As she followed Richard into his corner office, Madeline's mind raced back to that night in January. The charity gala had been a glittering affair at the Bellamy, with champagne flowing freely and the city's elite mingling under crystal chandeliers. She'd attended as a +1 with her roommate Jessica, whose family had connections with the organizers. Richard Bennett had been there alone, having recently ended a highly publicized relationship with a French model. Their eyes had met across the ballroom, and something electric had passed between them. They'd talked for hours, first about the charity's work supporting children's education, then about everything else: art, travel, their shared love of classical music. He hadn't mentioned his company, and she, recently laid off from her previous position, hadn't mentioned her job search. They were just 2 people connecting on a rare, magical level. One night. That was all it was supposed to be. Her beautiful memory before returning to real life. When she'd received the call 3 weeks later about an opening at Bennett Innovations, she'd been torn. The position was perfect, exactly what she'd been looking for, with an excellent salary and growth potential, but accepting meant potentially running into Richard. After much deliberation, she'd convinced herself that in a company that size, their paths would rarely cross. The CEO wouldn't remember one night with a woman whose last name he probably hadn't even registered. Then, 2 weeks after starting her new job, she'd missed her period. The pregnancy test had confirmed what she'd already suspected, and the ultrasound appointment had made it real. 12 weeks pregnant, Richard Bennett's child growing inside her. Now, as Richard closed his office door behind them, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline, Madeline felt cornered. The spacious office suddenly seemed too small, the air too thin. "Please, sit." Richard gestured to one of the sleek leather chairs facing his desk. He didn't take his usual seat behind the imposing glass desk, but instead chose the chair beside hers, turning it to face her directly. No barriers between them. "I've been impressed with your work, Ms. Harris," he began, his voice carefully measured. "Your financial analyses have been insightful, creative even. The board was particularly pleased with your presentation last week." "Thank you, Mr. Bennett," Madeline replied, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to stop them from shaking. Was he going to pretend he hadn't seen the date, or was he building up to something else? "However," he continued, leaning forward slightly, "I find myself curious about something." He paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her heart race. "When exactly did you apply for this position?" The question caught her off guard. February 7th, I believe. The interview process took about 2 weeks." Richard nodded slowly. "And prior to that you were with Westfield Financial for 3 years. Yes, there were layoffs after the merger." "I see." His eyes never left hers. "And the Bellamy Hotel charity gala was on January 22nd. The air seemed to vanish from the room. He remembered, not just the night, but the exact date. "You recognized me on your first day," he continued. "Not a question, but a statement. Yet you said nothing." Madeline swallowed hard. It didn't seem professional to mention it. "Professional," he repeated, the word hanging between them. "And the ultrasound I just picked up off the floor, the one dated April 15th, showing what appears to be a 12-week pregnancy." His voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it now. "Is professionalism also why you chose not to mention that?" Madeline felt heat rising to her cheeks, her carefully constructed world teetering on the brink of collapse. "Mr. Bennett, Richard," he corrected, his expression softening slightly. "I think we're well past formalities, Madeline." The sound of her first name on his lips brought back vivid memories of that night. Whispered conversations, gentle touches, the way he'd looked at her, as if she were the only woman in the world. "Richard," she began again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't plan for any of this to happen." Outside the window, dark clouds were gathering, mirroring the storm brewing within the office. A light rain began to tap against the glass, creating a rhythmic backdrop to the tension filling the space between them. "Were you ever going to tell me?" he asked, and for the first time she heard something vulnerable in his voice. "Or was I never supposed to know about my own child?" "I don't know," Madeline admitted, the truth spilling out before she could stop it. "I've been trying to figure out what to do since I found out." Richard ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that made him look suddenly vulnerable, less like the formidable CEO whose face graced business magazines, and more like the man she'd connected with that night at the Bellamy. "So it is mine?" he asked quietly, though they both knew the answer. Madeline nodded, her throat tight. "Yes. There's been no one else." A heavy silence filled the office, broken only by the increasing rhythm of raindrops against the window. The city skyline, usually so vivid from this height, was now obscured by sheets of rain, isolating them in their own world high above the streets. "I should have told you," she finally said, "but everything happened so fast. I didn't know I was pregnant when I accepted the position here, and then when I found out—" She trailed off, looking down at her hands. "You're Richard Bennett. Your last 3 girlfriends were models and actresses. Your company is expanding into international markets. Your life is complicated enough without your child," he interrupted, his voice sharper than she'd heard it before. "Did it occur to you that I might have wanted to know, that I might have had something to say about it?" Madeline felt a flicker of defiance. "And what would you have said, Richard? Congratulations on the surprise pregnancy from our one-night stand? Let me set you up with the best lawyers for a generous child support arrangement. Or perhaps, how unfortunate that this happened, but best of luck." Richard stood abruptly, pacing to the window. He stood there for a long moment, his back to her, shoulders tense beneath his tailored suit. When he finally turned, his expression was carefully controlled. "You're right," he said, surprising her. "I don't know what I would have said, but I deserved the chance to figure it out." Thunder rumbled outside, and Madeline felt the vibration in her chest, or perhaps that was just her heart, pounding with the weight of secrets finally exposed. "Tell me about the appointment," Richard said, his tone gentler now. Is the baby healthy?" The simple question, so full of genuine concern, threatened to undo her completely. "Yes," she managed, blinking back sudden tears. "Everything looks normal, strong heartbeat. The doctor says I'm doing well." Richard nodded, his relief visible. He returned to sit across from her, closer this time. "I want to be involved, Madeline. I need you to understand that. Whatever assumptions you've made about me or my reaction, they're wrong." "It's not that simple," she countered. "We barely know each other. One night, no matter how wonderful, doesn't make a relationship. And now I work for you. Do you have any idea how complicated this is?" "Of course I do," he responded, frustration edging his voice. "But that doesn't change the facts. In 7 months there will be a child. My child. Our child." He leaned forward. "And despite what the tabloids might suggest, I take my responsibilities seriously." Madeline studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity, and finding none. Richard Bennett might be many things, driven, intimidating, occasionally ruthless in business, but in this moment he was simply a man confronting unexpected news with more composure than most would manage. I have a doctor's appointment next week, she offered tentatively. They'll do another ultrasound. Something flickered in his eyes. Hope, perhaps. I'd like to be there if you'll allow it. Before she could respond, his office phone buzzed. Richard ignored it, but it buzzed again, insistent. Mr. Bennett, his assistant's voice came through the speaker. The Nakamura delegation has arrived early. They're waiting in the conference room. Richard closed his eyes briefly, the outside world intruding on their fragile moment of understanding. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes, Diane. He turned back to Madeline. I have to handle this. It's the Tokyo expansion. We've been working on it for months. His gaze was intense, almost pleading. But this conversation isn't over. Have dinner with me tonight. Not as your boss. As the father